across my career of working in numerous schools, in numerous different areas across the northwest of England, a prevailing issue is actually the funding, I think. So schools are very limited in the funding that they are given. So when you have the teachers who are continuously adapting their teaching styles, their classroom environments to try and ensure that it is as inclusive as possible for children, you really are quite limited when there is no funding for the schools. So unfortunately, that could then mean that these schools, which are 30, 40, 50 plus years old, don't quite have the facilities yet to be inclusive for everybody. Lack of funding in schools can mean that the general environment can be limited, but not only the environment, but there could be not enough staff in the school to cover the needs of every single child. There could be not the right facilities, not the right resources. And when you don't have those things and there are children in schools that have very specific needs, it really does limit how they can access the school. Once a date is arranged with the school for their access audit, I tend to have a look on their website first, so that way I can see what information is provided by the school, whether there is a map, any information on how I can get there, whether there's a car park. I will also have a look at maps to see what the general site looks like. When I arrive on the day, I do like to arrive early to my audits, where I can then have a look at the local environments and see where I am. Is there any public transport systems that people can use to attend the school? Does it look like there is more than one entrance? And generally get a feel for the local community. When arriving at the school, I will make an acquaintance with the school contact, who will quite often give me a brief tour of the school, pointing out any key areas that they may feel need particular attention. And it also gives me a great idea of the layout of the school, so where particular year groups are located, halls, if they have a library, which is really useful to know for the distances that may be required for some people to travel. So once I've had a general look round, I will then start the audit, where I'll take pictures, make notes, all on our tablet-based system. And by doing so, that will help to go towards generating a report later on, which then is given back to the school with a list of recommendations for what they can do to make the school more inclusive and a more accessible environment for everyone. My background in teaching began over a decade ago, but I've worked with children previously before that, always enjoying helping them to grow, to be who they are. And then as a teacher, it was becoming more and more apparent in schools that there really is a gap in some areas, particularly with children with SEN who may be struggling to access certain lessons or even just access the school in general. So throughout lots of CPD throughout the years and building up as much knowledge as I could, which was normally catered for the children I had in my class at the time. So throughout the years, you do have a different cohort who have different needs. And that's really where my interest began. So I've worked in schools where the percentage of children with special educational needs is very high. So we're talking about a third of a classroom that really does have specific requirements. So as a teacher, you really need to know your children inside and out and what you can do to make that learning environment as inclusive as possible, to make sure that everybody is equal, everybody has the same opportunities. And when this position that I'm currently in now arose, it was just a fantastic opportunity that I couldn't turn down, because it gave me the opportunity to not just work in one school, but to travel across the country to work in numerous schools where I can apply my knowledge and the knowledge I am developing on how every school can be just as inclusive. Being able to travel, I'm not restricted, that's the wrong word, but I'm not limited to just one school. I have already been up and down the country to numerous areas And it's absolutely fantastic to work with so many different schools across the country, because everyone really is united in that sense of wanting to create an inclusive environment for not just the children, but for their staff, the visitors that may come to the school, parents. And it is a theme that is running across the country. So it's lovely to be able to go to those different areas and be part of that. Accessibility audit covers a range of access requirements. It is not limited just to mobility. It could be for sight, hearing. A word that's coming out a lot at the moment is neurodiversity. So children with neurodiverse sensitivities that also require specific provisions in place, whether it's additional adults or whether it's the room that they are taught in, the breakout spaces that they can go to, which also helps us to look at lighting, noise levels of an area, which can be really disruptive to some children when you have this very noisy classroom. Sometimes they need somewhere just to break away for a moment. So all of those attributes are really important, not just the general mobility of being able to get in and out of the building, which is also very important, but we look at ramps, stairs, fire egress provisions, we look at if there are induction loops, we look at the seating provisions, not just for children, but for staff as well. So are there any areas that staff can frequently attend? These are all areas that we take into consideration when doing an accessibility audit. That can make the difference between a child being able to access their curriculum and not. So for children, their school is where they spend a vast majority of their life. They are there 5 days a week, from sometimes 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock at night if they're in clubs, and they really develop a sense of community with that school. So being able to access it is vitally important to feel included and to feel part of that community. If they don't, it could make the difference to how they feel about themselves, how they approach other people, how they create connections with other people, and then also how they can access their learning. So having an inclusive environment is absolutely vital within a school, and many schools are being really proactive in making sure that they are inclusive for everybody. It's been absolutely brilliant. I think there's such a range and depth of knowledge with so many of my colleagues in this company that it's been absolutely brilliant to work alongside them and learn from them and use their experiences to help as I'm trying to create my own. So I work very closely with many members of the team where I'm forever asking questions to them about what would this happen and how would you approach this, and the knowledge that they can share is absolutely fantastic. The general response that we are getting from schools is really positive. I quite often on my audits get so many members of staff coming up to me and asking, and even children, why are you here? What are you doing? Why are you taking a picture of that? And it's really interesting because not many people know what an accessibility audit is. And when they find out, they are so interested in what it is that they actually then start to communicate with me about issues that they may have noticed that they feel could be a barrier to either themselves or staff or students within the school, which is so helpful because it helps me to then make sure that my reports are honed in for that school, because every school is so different with a different cohort that it's really good to make sure that the reports are personalised to them. And I think that the schools really appreciate that and are very keen to make sure that their environments are accessible for everybody. And when they find out that they can rebook, because we will go back every 3 years, they are really interested to do that.